A fat 20-year-old was sold to an Amish man as punishment by her father. In a dusty frontier town where debts were paid in shame, one act of mercy changed everything. The saloon doors swung, the deal was struck, and a quiet farmer laid down his silver, not to own her, but to save her. But when gossip spread faster than wildfire, the town preacher called it sin, and neighbors whispered that kindness had gone too far. Still, that farmer refused to bow, even when his barn burned and his name turned to ashes. As winter storms rolled across the valley, she vanished into the snow, and he rode out after her with nothing but faith to guide him. Now the whole town's watching, holding its breath. Was she really a burden, or the miracle he'd been praying for all along? And when mercy costs a man his home, his faith, and his good name, how far will he go to prove that love can't be bought, only redeemed? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The wind pushed dust along the main street and rattled the tin sign above the saloon door. Evening had come early, and the sky held a deep red line like a cut across the mesa. Ava Haskins stood outside the saloon with her hands folded tight. Her dress was too thin for the chill. She had patched it herself with crooked stitches. A drunk laughed inside. A piano hit a wrong note and kept going. Her father, Tom Haskins, had gone in at noon and had not come out. He had promised he would win back the rent and buy flour. Eva waited the way she always waited, quiet, steady, and scared in her belly. She watched a freight wagon roll past with sacks of grain and a tired mule. She listened for her father's voice and hoped it would sound kind. A cowboy stumbled out and nearly bumped her. "Much obliged," he said when she steadied him. He peered at her face, then lower, then away, red with shame. He tipped his hat and hurried off. The saloon doors swung again. Laughter rose and fell like a storm breaking. Eva smelled cigar smoke and spilled whiskey. She pressed her back to the porch post and prayed in a whisper she did not know how to shape. "Lord, make him gentle. Make him done." Inside, Tom sat at the card table, hair wild, cheeks bright with drink. Coins and paper IOUs lay scattered. The dealer watched with flat eyes. Two ranch hands leaned forward over their cards like wolves over meat. A tall, quiet man in plain, dark clothes stood near the stove, warming his hands. He had the calm of a man who knew the price of winter. He said little and looked at no one long. His name was Lorenzo Stoltzfus. He had brought a sack of wool to sell, and then to buy salt, nails, lamp oil, and sugar for the child at home. He meant to leave before dark. The road to his farm turned cold after sundown. Tom lost a hand, then another. He slammed his palm on the table. "Deal again," he said. "One more, and I'm square." The dealer shook his head. "You're in deep." He pointed to the chalk slate on the wall. Numbers marked Tom's debts like tally marks on a prison door. Tom laughed, but the laugh turned mean. "I got something worth more than coin. I got a strapping girl outside can work like a mule." He jerked his head toward the door. "Fat as a butter cow, eats little, strong back. Who'll take the debt and take the girl?" The ranch hands hooted. One whistled. Someone banged a glass on wood. The piano stopped. Lorenzo turned his face from the stove and stared, and his jaw set. He had seen hard bargains. He had not seen a father sell a daughter. The dealer said, "That ain't funny." Tom spread his hands. "Who said I'm joking? $5 and a jug, and I'm clear. She's no use at home. Eats us out of winter." A murmur moved through the room like fire under brush. Men shifted. Some grinned because it was easier than stepping in. Some stared at the floor. Lorenzo felt heat rise under his collar. He heard his late wife's voice in memory. "Don't let them shame a child. Not ever. The doors swung. The wind pushed dust inside. Eva stepped onto the threshold because she had heard her name. Her face was pale, but her chin held. "Pa," she said, "it's getting late." "Come in, girl," Tom called, cheerful and deadly. "Stand where they can see you." She came to the table and folded her hands. She tried to make herself small, though she was not small. She drew breath and forced it slow. The men looked at her and looked away and looked again. She kept her eyes on the card deck. She counted the red diamonds to keep from crying. Tom lifted his glass. "A fine bargain. $5, a jug, and she's yours. Who wants her?" Silence fell, heavy as a wet blanket. The bartender coughed. The dealer sighed. The ranch hand with the whistle muttered, "It ain't right." Lorenzo stepped forward, the floorboards creaking under his boots. He laid his small roll of silver on the table. "I'll pay your debt," he said, voice low. "But hear me plain. I do not buy people. I pay to end a shame." Tom blinked. His eyes narrowed. "Same difference, preacher." "I am not a preacher," Lorenzo said. "I am a farmer and a father." He turned to Eva and shrugged off his coat. It smelled of wood smoke and wool. He set it on her shoulders without touching her skin. "You're cold," he said. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. She held the coat closed with both hands. Warmth moved through her like a small light. Tom scratched his jaw. "Debt's more than that, roll." Lorenzo pushed the rest of his coins forward. He took a folded paper from his pocket, a note from selling wool that day, and set it on top. "This covers it," he said. "You will take it and free your daughter." The dealer checked the slate, counted the silver, unfolded the note, and nodded. "He's right, Tom. That clears you." Some men exhaled. One said, "Good." Another said, "Thank the Lord." Tom's mouth twisted. He looked at his daughter, then at the jug the bartender had set out in hope of a sale. He snatched the coins and the paper and clutched them like a life rope. "Take her," he said, and waved his hand as if shooing a fly. "Keep her. I'm done." Lorenzo's face changed, not with pride, but with sorrow. He tipped his hat to the room. "Good night," he said. He nodded to the dealer, to the bartender, even to the men who had laughed. He placed a coin by the piano, as if to buy back the wrong note. Then he turned and led Eva toward the door. The night air bit. The street lay quiet, except for the jingle of a trace chain and a far coyote call. Lorenzo walked to the hitch rail, where a mule waited hitched to a small wagon with a canvas bow. He lifted the flap and pointed to a folded blanket. "You may sit," he said. "We will not travel far in the dark." Eva climbed in and sat on the wagon floor, back against the plank seat, coat pulled tight. She looked at her hands in the lamplight from the saloon window and tried to make sense of her life. Sold, and yet not owned. Freed, and yet not free. She could not find words. Lorenzo untied the lead rope, clicked his tongue, and led the mule toward the livery at the end of the street. The stable lantern swung, throwing gold light on hay bales and a sleepy boy with a pitchfork. "Stall and feed?" the boy asked. "Please," Lorenzo said, and paid the small fee. He guided the mule into a stall, rubbed its neck, and checked the harness for wear. He moved with careful hands, as if every strap mattered. Then he returned to the wagon. "Are you hungry?" he asked, stopping an arm's length away. "A little," Eva said. He set a small basket on the wagon bed and stepped back. "There is bread," he said, "and cheese. You may eat." She waited till he turned aside, then took a small piece. It tasted of salt and milk and kindness. She ate slowly, as if not to spend it all at once. From the livery loft came the soft rasp of the boy's broom. Somewhere a dog barked twice and stopped. The town settled deeper into night. Lorenzo looked up at the red line on the far horizon, now a thin bruise of color. He drew a long breath. "We will leave at first light," he said. "My farm lies a day's ride east. You will have a bed there tonight." Eva nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. He stood with his hands on the wagon rail, hat in hand, as if unsure whether to say more. He chose silence, which felt clean. After a while, he said, "You are not owned." He spoke the words like a promise laid down between them. Not by debt, not by shame. Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to be anything else," she said, so soft he almost did not hear. "You will learn," he said. He spread another blanket in the wagon and stepped back again. "I will sleep by the door," he said. "You will be safe." Eva lay down and pulled the wool to her chin. She watched the livery lantern throw slow circles on the rafters. She heard the mule breathe, heavy and warm. She thought of the prayer she had tried to make on the saloon porch. Words came now, plain and small. "Thank you for the coat. Thank you for bread. Please make morning." Lorenzo sat on a feed sack near the wagon wheel with his back to a post, hat on his knee. He listened to the quiet and to the old ache in his chest that had no words either. He closed his eyes and pictured a little girl at home, asleep under a quilt with blue stars. He pictured his mother's hands at the stove, steady hands that did not shake, even when the world did. He fitted those pictures into a prayer not spoken out loud. The livery smelled of hay and leather and the sweet musk of animals. Outside, the wind slowed. The dust settled back onto the street like a blanket spread over a long day. Night took hold, firm and gentle. In that stillness, the bargain struck in shame became a seed buried in dark soil. Morning would bring a road east, a plain house, and a girl's shy smile at the door. But for now, there was only a hard floor, a blanket, and the quiet breath of two people who had been spared and did not yet know what mercy would cost or give. Dawn crept slow over the town, painting the sky in pale orange. A chill hung in the air that carried the smell of wet dust and wood smoke. The rooster from the livery's back lot crowed once, sharp and lonely. Eva stirred beneath her blanket in the wagon bed, blinking at the faint light creeping through the canvas flap. Her body ached from the hard boards, but her heart felt strange, quiet, like the world had stopped shouting at her. Lorenzo had already risen. He stood near the mule, checking the traces, his breath fogging in the cold. The faint clink of harness rings and the scrape of leather filled the silence. He moved steady, like a man used to doing every task himself. When he noticed Eva sitting up, he tipped his hat politely. "Morning comes quick out here," he said. Eva nodded, still wrapping herself in the blanket. "It's cold." He gave a small smile. "Won't be for long. Sun'll warm us soon enough." He handed her a tin cup of water and a biscuit from the basket. "Eat a bit before we ride. It'll be a long road to my place. We'll make the valley by sundown if the mule don't dawdle." Eva chewed slowly, careful not to crumble the biscuit. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. Lorenzo hitched the mule and climbed onto the seat. "Best climb up. We've got ground to cover." The wagon jolted forward. Wheels creaked over frozen ruts. The livery and its lantern disappeared behind them. For a time, neither spoke. The road ran east through rolling prairie, golden grass bent with frost. Every few miles, a cottonwood stood lonely against the wide sky, leaves clinging like coins to a dying tree. Eva kept her hands folded in her lap, afraid to say the wrong thing. Lorenzo's quiet didn't feel harsh, just steady, like prayer. She stole glances at him when she dared. His beard was trimmed short, and his eyes were the color of turned earth after rain. His clothes were plain: black coat, white shirt, wool hat pulled low. Everything about him spoke of usefulness, not pride. When the wagon creaked over a shallow rise, she saw mountains far to the west, their tops dusted with snow. She thought of the home she had left, a shack with a leaking roof, her father snoring beside the stove. Shame tightened her chest. She turned away from the mountains. By midday, Lorenzo pulled the mule to a stop beside a small creek. The water sparkled thinly over stones. He climbed down and unhitched the animal. "We'll rest a spell," he said. "Drink and stretch your legs." Eva stepped carefully from the wagon. Her feet were numb, and her skirts caught on a low branch. She tugged, and the fabric tore. "Oh no," she murmured, pressing her hand to the rip. Lorenzo noticed, walked over, and studied the tear. "Hold still," he said. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a small needle and thread. "Can mend it quick. My wife used to patch everything twice before throwing it out." Eva held the fabric steady while he stitched. His hands were rough but gentle. Neither spoke until the thread was tied. "There," he said, stepping back. "Good as new." She looked at the small, neat stitches and swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thank you." He nodded once and went to refill the canteen. They ate a small meal of cold bread and apples. The creek gurgled softly. A meadowlark whistled from somewhere unseen. For the first time in months, Eva let her shoulders relax. When they started again, the sun was high. Dust trailed behind the wagon in lazy curls. Lorenzo hummed under his breath, some tune without words, the kind a man hums when he's thinking. Eva dared to ask, "Do you live alone?" He hesitated. "Not alone. My mother and my daughter. The farm's quiet, but we manage." Eva's fingers twisted in her lap. "You have a daughter?" "Ruthie," he said softly, a hint of warmth in his voice. 9 years old, sharp as a tack, talks more than a jaybird." That made Eva smile. "She sounds sweet." "She is." His voice softened. "Lost her mama 3 winters ago. Been trying to fill that empty space ever since." Eva looked down. "I'm sorry." He tipped his hat in thanks, not wanting pity. "The Lord gives and takes. We learn to keep walking." The road curved into the valley by late afternoon. Pines thickened along the edges, their scent strong in the cold air. A fence line appeared, then a small farmhouse, a plain white structure with a porch and a single lantern flickering by the door. Beyond it, a barn stood dark and sturdy, smoke curling from the chimney of a small cookhouse. As they drew near, a child's voice rang out. "Papa!" Little girl ran from the porch, skirts flapping, hair in braids that bounced against her shoulders. Behind her came an older woman with a gray bun and a cautious step. Lorenzo climbed down, scooping the girl into his arms. "Missed you, Ruthie," he said with a smile, rare but true. Ruthie grinned and pointed to the wagon. "Who's that?" Lorenzo set her down gently. "A guest," he said. "Her name's Eva. She'll stay a while." The girl turned, her eyes wide and curious. "Hello," she said brightly. Eva stepped down from the wagon, holding the coat tight around her. "Hello." The older woman, Lorenzo's mother, walked forward, hands clasped. Her gaze was sharp but not unkind. "Supper's near ready," she said. "You'll be hungry from the road." Eva nodded, unsure whether to smile. "Yes, ma'am." "Then come inside," Mary said, turning towards the house. "We'll have no talk of debts at my table." The warmth of the kitchen hit Eva like sunlight. A kettle steamed on the stove. The smell of stew filled the air. Ruthie tugged Ava's hand and pulled her to a chair. "Sit here," the girl said. Lorenzo hung his hat by the door and gave his mother a nod of thanks. "We'll eat, then I'll tend the mule." Mary ladled stew into bowls, her motions brisk and neat. "Eat before it cools," she said. Eva tasted the broth, rich with carrots and salt pork, and nearly wept. She hadn't eaten a meal this kind in months. Ruthie chattered between spoonfuls about her doll, her school, and the stray cat that had taken up in the hayloft. Eva listened, smiling shyly. When supper was done, Lorenzo read a short passage from his Bible and bowed his head. "For mercy undeserved, we give thanks." His voice trembled faintly at the end. Mary watched Eva over the lamplight and said nothing. Later, as the fire died down, Lorenzo showed Eva to the small, spare room, a quilt on the bed, a pitcher of water on the stand. "You can rest now," he said. "We rise early." Eva stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "You've been kind," she said. "Not kind," he answered quietly. "Just doing what's right." He stepped away, boots creaking on the floorboards. Outside, the wind had softened. From the next room came the sound of Ruthie saying her prayers. Eva sat on the edge of the bed and pressed the quilt to her face. It smelled of soap and cedar. For the first time in her life, she fell asleep feeling safe. The next morning came with a faint pink glow over the valley. Frost sparkled on the fence rails, and a rooster crowed somewhere near the barn. Eva awoke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the clean walls, the folded quilt, and the small pitcher of water on the washstand. And she remembered. She washed her face, combed her hair with the brush left by the basin, and stepped out into the hallway. The house was simple but sturdy. Bare pine floors, handmade furniture, a cross carved above the doorway. Downstairs, the clatter of pots mixed with Ruthie's bright laughter. When Eva reached the kitchen, Mary Stoltzfus was kneading bread at the table. Her sleeves were rolled up, her arms strong from years of work. Ruthie stood on a stool beside her, trying to copy the motion. "Well, good morning," Mary said without looking up. "Sleep well?" "Yes, ma'am," Eva said. "Thank you for the room." Mary nodded. "You'll earn it. Everyone here works." Her tone wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact. Lorenzo came in from outside, carrying a pail of fresh milk. "Morning to you both," he said, setting it on the counter. He gave Eva a polite nod before turning to his mother. "Fence post by the creek's leaning again. I'll fix it after breakfast." Mary didn't glance up. "Eat first, work later." They sat at the small table while Ruthie fetched the mugs. Mary poured coffee for Lorenzo and warm milk for the rest. "Say grace," she told him. Lorenzo bowed his head. "Lord, thank you for the food, for safety on the road, and for new chances. Amen." Eva murmured the Amen with them, her heart full but uncertain. The simple kindness of it all felt too much, too strange. After breakfast, Lorenzo motioned toward the door. "Come see the place," he said. Outside, the sun had melted the frost, leaving pearls of water on every blade of grass. The air smelled of hay and damp earth. Beyond the house stretched fenced pasture, a narrow barn, and rows of drying corn stalks. Chickens pecked in the dirt near a shed, clucking contentedly. Lorenzo pointed. "Barn there's for the mule and cows. Smokehouse sits back yonder. Water comes from the spring. My mother tends the garden when she can, but winter's near." Eva looked around, amazed at the quiet beauty of it. "It's peaceful," she said. He nodded. "It is, most days." Ruthie came running out with a wool scarf trailing behind her. "Papa, can she help me feed the hens?" "If she wishes," Lorenzo said. Eva smiled. "I'd like that." The girl took her hand, small and warm, and led her toward the coop. "They peck a little," Ruthie warned, "but they don't mean it." Eva scattered feed as Ruthie laughed beside her. The hens clucked and fluttered. For a moment, Eva forgot every cruel word her father had ever spoken. By midday, Mary called them in. The kitchen was fragrant with stew again. Eva helped wash the carrots, trying to learn the rhythm of the house. Mary watched her from the corner of her eye, saying nothing but noticing every move. "You work careful," Mary said finally. Eva looked up, unsure whether it was praise or warning. "I try to." "Good. Careful lasts longer than quick." When they sat down for dinner, Ruthie chattered about a story from her Bible reader. Lorenzo listened, smiling faintly. Eva ate slowly, not wanting to seem greedy. After the meal, Ruthie tugged Eva's sleeve. "Come see my doll." Eva followed her to a small bedroom where the bed was covered in a patchwork quilt. The doll was made of cloth, with button eyes and yarn hair. "Her name's Annie," Ruthie said proudly. "Mama made her before she went to heaven." Eva felt her chest tighten. "She's lovely," she said softly. Ruthie looked up. "Did your mama go to heaven too?" Eva hesitated. I think so." The child nodded, satisfied, and began to hum while fixing Annie's dress. When evening came, Mary lit the oil lamp. Warm light filled the kitchen. Lorenzo opened a worn Bible and read aloud from Psalms. His voice was steady, deep, and kind. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those crushed in spirit." Eva lowered her eyes. The verse felt written just for her. After the reading, Ruthie knelt beside her chair and folded her hands. "You can pray too if you want," the girl whispered. Eva hesitated, then clasped her own hands. "Lord," she said, voice trembling, "thank you for this home and these people." She paused. "Please make me useful." Mary's eyes softened across the table, though she said nothing. When it was time for bed, Lorenzo carried the lamp to light Eva's way. At the door to her small room, he stopped. "You did well today," he said. "Ruthie likes you." Eva smiled faintly. "She's a good girl." "She is," he said, nodding. "Her mama was too." Then he caught himself and looked away. "Rest well." He left her in the soft glow of lamplight. Eva stood there for a moment, her heart pounding with feelings she couldn't name. Gratitude, maybe hope, maybe fear of losing both. She knelt beside the bed and whispered one more prayer before sleep took her. By sunrise, the rooster had crowed twice, and a thin mist lay low over the valley. The scent of damp hay and smoke drifted through the open window of Eva's small room. She dressed quickly, smoothing her worn dress and tucking stray strands of hair behind her ears. The quiet murmur of voices below told her the day had already begun. In the kitchen, Mary was stirring a pot of oats while Lorenzo mended a leather harness at the table. Ruthie perched on a stool, swinging her legs and humming. "Morning," Eva said softly. Mary nodded. "Morning. There's porridge and honey. Eat quick, work waits." Lorenzo looked up briefly. "Fence needs mending. Mother will show you the chores about the house." After breakfast, Eva followed Mary outside to the yard. The air was brisk, the kind that woke every sense. Chickens scattered at their feet as Mary pointed toward the garden beds. "Pull the weeds from that far row. We'll turn the soil before frost sets in. And mind the hens, they'll sneak behind you." Eva knelt in the cold dirt, fingers stiff but determined. She worked until her knees ached, then moved to the pump to wash her hands. The water ran clear and biting cold. Mary approached with a basket of laundry. You worked steady, she said. That's good. Steady gets things done out here. Eva smiled shyly. I'm trying to learn. Mary handed her a wet sheet. Then you'll learn fast. They hung the laundry together, the fabric snapping in the wind. Ruthie ran out with a laugh, waving a twig as if it were a flag. Mama Eva, look! I found a feather. Eva turned, startled by the name. The girl's bright eyes made it impossible to correct her. That's a fine one, Eva said gently. Lorenzo came from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He paused, seeing them in the sunlight, his mother, the new woman, and the child laughing among the sheets. A warmth stirred in him he hadn't felt since before his wife passed. After the wash was hung, Mary went inside to tend to bread dough. Eva followed her, rolling up her sleeves. Can I help? Mary studied her for a moment, then nodded. You can knead. Push with the heels of your hands. Don't be afraid of it. The dough was soft and sticky at first, but Eva found a rhythm. The smell of yeast filled the kitchen. Ruthie sat on the stool, kicking her heels and asking questions faster than either woman could answer. What's your favorite color? Do you like kittens? Do you know how to read? Eva hesitated at the last one. No, not really. Mary raised an eyebrow. Lorenzo, passing through to fetch a bucket, paused. I can teach you, he said. Eva blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Teach me? He nodded, voice quiet. Reading. We can start with scripture. Everyone ought to read God's word for themselves. She looked down, embarrassed. I never had a chance to learn. Then you'll have one now. He gave a small, reassuring smile before heading back outside. That evening, after supper, Lorenzo brought out a small Bible worn smooth at the edges. He set it on the table beside the lamp. We'll start simple, he said. Ruthie leaned close, eager to listen. Papa taught me when I was 6. Eva sat beside him, hands trembling slightly. The letters swam at first, but Lorenzo's patience steadied her. He traced the words with one finger. This says, "The Lord is my shepherd. Say it with me." She repeated it softly, stumbling on shepherd. Good, he said. Try again. By the third time, she said it right. Ruthie clapped her hands in delight. When the lesson ended, Lorenzo closed the book. You did fine, he said. Tomorrow we'll do the next verse. Eva smiled, her heart swelling. Thank you. I never thought I'd learn. Mary, listening from her rocker by the stove, pretended not to hear, but her eyes glistened. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Eva stepped onto the porch. The moon hung bright over the valley, silvering the fields and barn roof. She breathed in the cold air, her hands wrapped around her shawl. Behind her, the door creaked open. Lorenzo stepped out, boots quiet on the boards. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much to think about, she said softly. It's peaceful here. He nodded. Peace don't come easy. You have to keep it like land. You tend it, mend the fences, pray for rain. She looked at him, the lantern light from inside casting a glow on his face. Thank you for giving me a place to stay. You're welcome, he said simply. You've earned your keep already. They stood together in silence, listening to the coyotes yip far away. The world felt wide and safe all at once. When Eva finally went inside, she knelt by her bed and whispered, Thank you for today. Upstairs, Lorenzo watched the light go out in her room and bowed his head too. Lord, he murmured, help her see she's worth more than the lies she's been told. By late autumn, the air in the valley had turned sharp, and wood smoke curled from every chimney. The Stoltzfus farm ran smooth, Eva gathering eggs, Ruthie reciting lessons, Lorenzo hauling hay before frost. Yet under the peace, something restless stirred. One Saturday, Lorenzo hitched the wagon for a trip into town. He needed salt and nails before the first snow. Eva offered to stay home and tend the fire, but Mary pressed a loaf of bread into her hands. "Ride along," she said. "The trip'll do you good." The road wound between bare cottonwoods, branches clattering like dry bones. Eva sat quiet beside Lorenzo, hands tucked beneath his old coat. She liked the rhythm of the wheels and the steady creak of the harness. When they reached town, she kept her eyes low. People paused to stare. Whispers passed, quick as wind. "That's the girl he bought, the fat one from the saloon. What's she doing with an Amish man?" Eva felt her cheeks burn. Lorenzo seemed not to notice. He lifted flour and salt into the wagon bed and nodded politely to everyone he passed. But gossip traveled faster than the mule. Outside the feed store, Pastor Clancy stood near the hitching rail. His black coat snapped in the wind, his eyes sharp as frost. "Brother Stoltzfus," he said, voice carrying across the street. "A word." Lorenzo stopped. "Yes, Pastor?" Clancy's gaze shifted to Eva. "You shame yourself, bringing sin into our community. You bring confusion to the young. A godly man doesn't take a fallen woman into his home." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "She's not fallen," he said. The pastor raised his voice so the crowd could hear. "The Lord warns against appearance of evil. What you've done looks wrong, and that's enough to stain your witness." The street went still. Men pretended to busy themselves tying reins, but their ears stayed open. Eva stood frozen, tears burning behind her eyes. Lorenzo spoke calmly but firm. "You judge by rumor, I judge by mercy. She was cast out and I offered shelter, that's all." "Shelter turns to scandal quick," Clancy said. "Mark my words, you'll bring ruin." Lorenzo set his jaw and met the preacher's stare. "Then let ruin come, if that's what kindness costs." The silence that followed was heavy. A few townsfolk looked ashamed, others turned away. Lorenzo tipped his hat, helped Eva into the wagon, and drove off without another word. The road home was quiet except for the squeak of the wheels. Eva finally spoke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've made trouble for you." He shook his head. "Don't you take blame for their talk. I'd rather stand right before God than popular before men." When they reached the farm, dusk had fallen. Mary met them at the gate, her eyes full of questions. "What happened?" "Gossip," Lorenzo said simply, unloading the supplies. Mary looked from him to Eva and saw the tremor in the young woman's hands. She softened. "Best come in, supper's near ready." That night, as wind pressed against the walls, Eva sat by the fire sewing a tear in Ruthie's doll. Lorenzo worked quietly at the table, repairing a broken harness buckle. The warmth of the firelight made everything feel safe again. But after Ruthie went to bed, Eva turned to him, eyes glistening. "You should have let me go," she said. "You could have kept your place in the church." He met her gaze, voice steady. "My place isn't theirs to give or take. The Lord saw what happened that night. I did what was right." She looked down. "No one's ever said I was worth standing up for." "You are now," he said. Outside, the first snowflakes drifted through the lamplight, soft as feathers. Later, as Mary banked the fire, she whispered to Lorenzo, "You've set yourself against the town. Are you sure?" He nodded. "I am." Mary sighed, but placed a hand on his arm. "Then we'll stand together." In her small room, Eva prayed for him until her tears ran dry. She prayed he wouldn't pay too high a price for her presence. But deep down, she knew something had changed forever. The man who once lived by duty alone had chosen compassion, no matter the cost. By morning, word had spread through every corner of the valley. Some called Lorenzo a fool. Others said he'd done a holy thing. The farm, once peaceful, had become a quiet fortress of faith. And as the snow deepened outside, so did the bond that neither of them yet dared to name. The snow came down light that morning, a lazy drift that softened the valley and quieted the air. Smoke rose from the stovepipe in a steady column, and the smell of fresh bread filled the Stoltzfus home. Inside, life had fallen into a calm rhythm again. Chores, lessons, and small, simple joys. Ava had grown used to the sound of the rooster, the steady rhythm of milking, and Ruthie's chatter from dawn till dusk. She rose early, tying her shawl close as she helped Mary with breakfast. Together they mixed cornmeal and honey for muffins. The kitchen stayed warm and bright, lamplight dancing across Mary's spectacles as she worked. When Lorenzo came in from the barn, brushing snow off his shoulders, Ruthie ran to him. "Papa, I finished the verse," she said, waving her little Bible. Lorenzo smiled, patting her hair. "That's good, my girl." Then he looked to Eva. "You'll have your reading lesson after breakfast." Eva nodded, shy but proud. "I practiced last night." Mary hid a smile as she poured coffee. "Seems this house has turned into a schoolhouse," she said. "Better learning than fighting," Lorenzo replied. After breakfast, Ruthie brought her schoolbook while Eva opened the worn Bible Lorenzo had given her. He sat across from her, patient as ever. "Let's try the next verse," he said. "Say it slow." She traced the words with her finger. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters." "Good," he said softly. "You see how peace follows obedience?" Eva smiled. "I think I understand." As she read, Ruthie leaned against her arm, listening. The small girl's warmth filled the space beside her heart that had been empty for years. Later that day, they worked outside together. The storm had passed, leaving the world shining. Ruthie and Eva carried buckets of water to the trough. Ruthie slipped on the ice, laughing as Eva steadied her. The child's laughter was like the clear ring of a bell, chasing away the heavy quiet that used to haunt the house. From the barn door, Lorenzo watched, hammer in hand, pretending to fix a latch that didn't need fixing. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest. Life returning, quiet and steady. At midday, Mary called them in for stew. They ate around the table, steam fogging the window panes. Ruthie chattered about tracks she'd seen in the snow. "Maybe a rabbit, maybe a fox," she guessed. "Could be both," Lorenzo said. "Best to leave them be. God feeds them same as he feeds us." After lunch, Mary and Eva worked together mending clothes. Eva's stitches had improved, neat and firm. "You've got a good hand," Mary said, nodding. "Thank you," Eva said softly. "You've been patient with me." Mary's tone softened. "Patience is a choice, same as kindness. You've brought laughter back to this house. That's no small thing." The compliment made Eva's throat tighten. She bent her head, pretending to focus on the thread. That evening, as the light faded, Lorenzo carried in a stack of kindling. "Storm coming," he said. "Best stay close to the fire tonight." They gathered around the hearth, Ruthie on the floor coloring with a stub of pencil, Eva darning socks, and Mary knitting beside the lamp. The storm rolled over the valley with a low growl of thunder. Wind shook the shutters, but inside the little farmhouse, peace held firm. To pass the time, Ruthie asked Lorenzo to tell a story about his boyhood in Pennsylvania. His voice was gentle as he spoke of long summers, cornfields, and his father's strong hands on the plow. Eva listened, her heart warming at the sound of contentment she hadn't heard from him before. When the wind grew louder, Ruthie climbed into Eva's lap. "You'll stay, won't you?" she asked sleepily. Eva looked down at the girl's trusting face. as long as I'm welcome." "You're always welcome," Ruthie murmured, her eyes drifting closed. Lorenzo watched them quietly from his chair. The lamplight caught the edges of Eva's face, her eyes soft with affection. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of what their hearts already knew, but dared not claim. Later, when Ruthie was tucked into bed, Mary stood at the kitchen door, looking out at the storm. "I reckon the good Lord sent that woman for a reason," she said quietly. Lorenzo nodded. "He does all things for a reason." Upstairs, Ava knelt beside her bed and whispered her nightly prayer. "Thank you for today. Thank you for laughter." The wind eased and silence fell. She lay awake a while longer, listening to the faint hum of the storm dying down and the steady creak of the farmhouse settling for the night. For the first time, she didn't feel like a guest. She felt like she belonged. Winter deepened, blanketing the valley in white. The days shortened to pale hours of work and long evenings by lamplight. Life on the farm had fallen into a rhythm so gentle that Ava almost forgot the world outside existed. Then, one gray morning, the world came calling. Lorenzo had just returned from mending a broken gate when he spotted the stage driver's wagon trundling down the frozen road. The man waved a mittened hand and called out, "Post for you, Stoltzfus." Lorenzo met him by the fence and took a small envelope stamped with the town seal. The handwriting was rough, barely legible. He turned it over in his hand, frowning. When he came inside, Ava was drying dishes while Ruthie drew flowers on a scrap of paper. Mary looked up from her mending as Lorenzo set the letter on the table. "From town?" she asked. He nodded. "Looks to be." He hesitated, then slid it toward Eva. "It's addressed to you." Eva froze, dishcloth in hand. "To me?" "Yes." Her name was scrawled across the front in her father's uneven script. Her stomach turned cold. Mary saw the color drain from her face. "You want me to open it?" Eva shook her head. "No, I'll do it." Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper smudged with dirt and tobacco. She read the first line and felt the blood rush from her cheeks. "Eva, you left me with nothing. I took a loan to pay for that debt you ran off on. The bank says your name's on it, so don't go thinking you're free. They'll collect one way or another." "Tom Haskins." Her voice cracked as she read it aloud. Lorenzo's brow furrowed. "A loan? Under your name?" "I don't know what he means," Eva whispered. "I never signed anything." Mary's mouth tightened. "That man would sign the devil's ledger if he thought it'd buy him whiskey." Before anyone could answer, a knock sounded at the door, firm and official. Lorenzo opened it to find a man in a wool coat, holding a folder under his arm. "Mr. Stoltzfus? I'm Mr. Tillman from the county bank. I'm afraid this concerns your property." Mary stiffened. "What's this about?" Tillman nodded politely. "A debt has been filed, miss. Seems this young woman's name appears on a loan document. It names this farm as security." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "Paperwork says otherwise," Tillman replied. He handed over a folded page. "You'll have 30 days to settle or contest the claim. Good day to you." When he left, the silence in the room felt heavier than the snow outside. Ava clutched the back of a chair, shaking. He used my name," she whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." Lorenzo's voice softened. "I believe you." Mary's eyes glistened. That wretch would drag his own kin into ruin. Eva backed away, tears streaming. "I've brought this on you," she said. "You should have never taken me in." Ruthie rushed forward and wrapped her small arms around Ava's waist. "Don't cry," she said. "Papa can fix anything." Lorenzo knelt beside her. "Listen to me," he said gently. This isn't your fault. I'll ride into town tomorrow and speak with Tillman. We'll find the truth." "But the farm," Eva began. He shook his head. "Let tomorrow worry about itself. Tonight, you rest." That evening, Lorenzo sat by the window long after everyone had gone to bed. Snow whispered against the glass as he studied the forged paper. The signature was clumsy, the ink uneven. He knew guilt when he saw it. Tom Haskins had done this out of spite. Before dawn, he saddled the mule and rode toward town, the wind biting his face. At the bank, Tillman looked surprised to see him so early. "You again?" "This loan is false," Lorenzo said, laying the paper on the counter. "The woman never signed it." Tillman smirked. "It's her name, isn't it? Hard to prove a thing in these parts, unless you've got witnesses." "I have truth," Lorenzo said, his voice low, "and the Lord's eyes on my side. That'll be enough." Tillman leaned back. "Truth don't count for much in ledgers, Mr. Stoltzfus. Pay or prove, but don't waste my time." Lorenzo's calm broke for a moment. "You'll get neither until you show me the original contract." "Can't be done. It's filed in Denver." Lorenzo turned and left before anger could speak for him. The ride home was long and cold. He stopped once by a frozen creek to water the mule, staring at his reflection in the ice. He felt helpless but not hopeless. "Lord," he whispered, "show me what to do." By the time he returned, dusk had fallen. The windows of the farmhouse glowed like beacons. When he stepped inside, Eva was sitting by the fire, hands folded tight. "Did they believe you?" she asked. "They'll believe in time," he said, "but it may take proof." "I can't let you lose your home because of me," she said. "I should leave." Lorenzo set his hat down hard on the table. "No, you're under my roof, and you'll stay there. This farm's built on more than land. It's built on faith. We'll face this together." Her eyes filled again. "Why do you keep standing up for me?" "Because that's what a man's meant to do," he said simply. He took a seat near the fire and rubbed his hands together. Ruthie crept out from the hallway and sat between them, her head resting against Eva's shoulder. The three sat like that in silence for a long while, the only sound the pop of the fire and the wind rising outside. When Eva went to bed later, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of guilt and gratitude pressing heavy on her heart. She whispered into the darkness, "Please, God, don't let his kindness cost him everything." In the next room, Lorenzo prayed the same words, though he didn't know she was doing the same. The snow had begun to thaw, and the valley wore a cold shine of melted ice when Sunday morning came. The air carried a quiet weight. Lorenzo rose early, already dressed in his plain black coat. Eva helped Mary braid Ruthie's hair, her own hands shaking slightly as she tied the ribbon. The days since the banker's visit had been long and heavy. Every hour seemed to remind her that her name, her shame, might cost them everything. She worked harder than ever, but sorrow followed her like a shadow. Now, as the church bell echoed across the frozen fields, Lorenzo fastened the mule's harness in silence. Eva hesitated at the door, clutching her shawl. "Are you sure we should go?" she asked. He turned, eyes steady. "If we hide, they'll think the worst. It's time to stand before them, not behind." Mary placed a firm hand on Eva's shoulder. "Go on. You belong there as much as any soul alive." The wagon creaked down the snowy lane. Ruthie hummed softly, unaware of the tension. The steeple came into view, whitewashed, proud, and cold under the pale sky. Folks were already gathering, their breath misting in the air, their eyes following the Stoltzfus wagon as it rolled to a stop. Lorenzo helped Ruthie down, then offered his hand to Eva. She hesitated before taking it. "They'll whisper," she murmured. "They already do," he said. "Let them." Inside, the church smelled of pine wood and lamp oil. The benches were filled, and conversations quieted as they entered. Pastor Clancy stood near the pulpit, his Bible open like a weapon waiting to be drawn. Eva kept her gaze on the floor as they took a seat near the back. Ruthie swung her legs, smiling at familiar faces who did not smile back. When the hymns began, Eva's voice trembled. She wanted to sing but could not. Lorenzo's deep baritone filled the space beside her, and somehow she found her strength again, her whisper blending with his. Halfway through the service, the pastor cleared his throat and looked toward them. "There are those among us," he began, "who bring confusion and sin into our fellowship. Charity is good, but charity misplaced invites ruin." The congregation shifted uneasily. Eva froze, her heart hammering. She knew he meant them. Lorenzo stood, calm but unyielding. "If you speak of me, Pastor," he said, voice clear, "say it plain." Clancy straightened. "You brought a woman into your home under scandalous circumstances. The Lord calls his people to purity." "She was cast out by her own father," Lorenzo replied. "Would you have left her in the cold?" Clancy's face reddened. "There are proper ways." "Proper ways," Lorenzo interrupted, stepping forward. "You mean comfortable ways. You'd rather keep your hands clean than lift a fallen soul." Gasps rippled through the pews. Ruthie clutched Mary's arm. Eva felt faint. Lorenzo's voice grew steady, stronger. "This woman has worked harder and prayed truer than most men I know. If helping her is sin, then I'll bear it gladly." The church went silent except for the hiss of the oil lamps. Even Pastor Clancy faltered. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Lorenzo looked toward the congregation, his expression softening. "I intend to marry her," he said, "not for pity but for love, for the peace she's brought to my home." The silence deepened until it broke with a single sound, Mary's quiet sob. Then a murmur spread, half shock, half wonder. Clancy tried to recover his voice. "Marriage does not wash away." "It does," Lorenzo said, "when God himself ordains it." He reached for Eva's hand. She rose slowly, tears shining in her eyes. The room blurred around her. All she could see was him, steady as a mountain. Mary stood next, her voice trembling but firm. "The Lord said mercy triumphs over judgment, and I reckon he meant it." A few heads nodded, then more. When they left the church, the cold sunlight struck the snow so bright it hurt to look. Eva stood beside the wagon, dazed, while townsfolk whispered behind gloved hands. Some offered stiff nods, others turned away. Lorenzo took the reins, but before climbing up, he said quietly, "You're free of shame now. Let no one bind you again." Eva looked at him, still trembling. "You meant what you said? You'd really marry me?" He nodded once. "When the spring thaw comes, we'll stand before God and man both." Mary, stepping up beside them, said softly, "Then may the Lord make it a good spring." As the wagon rolled home through glittering snow, Eva turned once to look back. The church steeple rose against the sky, tall and still. The bell didn't ring again that day, as if even heaven paused to listen. That night, Ruthie drew a picture by the fire, 3 people holding hands beneath a cross. "That's us," she said proudly. "Our family." Eva touched the drawing, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lorenzo watched her from his chair, the flicker of firelight reflected in his eyes. For the first time, he didn't pray for strength. He prayed in thanks, for love that grew from mercy and courage that had finally found its voice. Snow still clung to the hills, though the day had turned calm. The Stoltzfus farm rested in rare peace after the storm of gossip. Lorenzo had spent the week mending fences and checking the roof for leaks. Mary hummed while baking. Ruthie played with her doll, and Ava sat by the window sewing new curtains, her heart light for the first time in years. That evening, supper filled the room with warmth. The stew bubbled, Ruthie told stories, and Lorenzo even laughed, a soft sound that made Mary smile. When the dishes were washed, Eva stepped outside to shake a rug. The air was clear, the stars sharp against the black sky. She breathed deep, thinking how strange and wonderful life had become. Later, long after Ruthie had fallen asleep, the scent of smoke woke Eva. At first she thought she was dreaming. Then came a crackle, a sharp, hungry sound. She rushed to the window. Flames shot from the barn roof, bright and terrible against the night. "Fire!" she screamed. Lorenzo was already running, bare feet pounding across the frozen ground. Eva grabbed a bucket, filling it at the pump, her fingers burning from the cold. Mary appeared with another. "Keep the girl inside!" Lorenzo shouted, coughing through the smoke. The blaze roared higher, swallowing the sky. Horses kicked and screamed inside their stalls. Lorenzo ran to the door, yanking at the latch, but the heat drove him back. "God help us," he gasped. He threw his coat over his head and plunged in again. Eva's throat burned as she flung water over the straw near the door, trying to keep the flames from spreading. Sparks bit her arms, but she didn't stop. When Lorenzo stumbled out, dragging a frightened mule by the reins, she helped pull him clear. They watched helplessly as the rest of the barn caved in with a crash that shook the ground. By dawn, only blackened beams remained. Smoke rose thin into the pale morning. Lorenzo sank to his knees in the ashes. One horse was gone. The tools, the stored feed, everything ruined. Eva stood beside him, shivering. "It's my fault," she whispered. "It's a sign. God's punishing you for me." He turned sharply. "Don't you speak that lie. Mercy doesn't bring ruin, wickedness does. And I don't believe you're wicked." Tears streaked her soot-blackened face. "You don't know what follows me." "I know enough," he said quietly. "And I ain't letting shame drive you from the only place you belong." But as he looked towards the road, faint footprints led away from the ashes. He frowned. Someone was here before the fire. "Spread!" Mary joined them, her shawl pulled tight. "We'll find out who," she said. That night, Eva sat in her room staring at the burned horizon. Every creak of the wind sounded like judgment. Before dawn, she packed her shawl and left a small note on the table. "I'm sorry. You deserve peace." Then she stepped into the snow, leaving the light of the farmhouse behind her. The sky was still dark when Eva stepped out into the cold. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the valley. Her breath came out in small clouds as she tightened the shawl around her shoulders and began walking. Behind her, the farmhouse stood silent, smoke no longer rising from the chimney. Every step she took away from it made her chest ache deeper. Snow crunched under her boots. Her fingers were numb, and the wind bit through the thin fabric of her dress. She thought of the fire, the heat, the screams of the horse, the way Lorenzo had looked at her through the smoke. "It's my fault," she told herself again and again. "If I hadn't come, none of this would have happened." By daylight, she reached the frozen road that wound towards the old stage station 10 miles north. The place had been abandoned years ago, but she remembered passing it on their first journey together. The snow was heavier now, falling thick and steady. She pressed on, her skirts soaked and stiff with ice. Back at the farmhouse, Lorenzo woke to Ruthie's cries. He found the note on the table and felt his stomach turn cold. "She's gone," he whispered. Mary came to his side, face pale as paper. "Lord have mercy," she said. "She'll die out there." Lorenzo pulled on his coat and boots, his movements quick but steady. "Stay with Ruthie," he told his mother. "Keep the fire high." He loaded a blanket, matches, and a tin of biscuits into a sack, and stepped out into the storm. The snow came harder as he followed her tracks, faint indentations already filling with white. The wind howled through the cottonwoods, carrying his voice away when he called her name. "Ava! Ava, can you hear me?" No answer, only the sound of the storm swallowing itself. Hours passed. The cold gnawed at his hands, but he kept walking. He prayed with every breath, "Lord, keep her alive. Lead me where she's gone." Ava's strength was fading fast. The wind cut through her shawl like knives, and her legs trembled. She thought of Ruthie's laughter, the warmth of the fire, Lorenzo's voice reading scripture. Each memory felt like something she could almost touch before it vanished. At last she saw the dark outline of the old stage station through the swirling snow. Half the roof had collapsed, but part of the wall still stood. She stumbled inside and sank to the ground. Her hands burned with cold. She tried to light a match, but her fingers wouldn't move. "Forgive me, Lord," she whispered. "I was only trying to do right." Outside, Lorenzo saw her faint footprints leading off the main trail. He followed them toward the ruins. The snow blinded him, stinging his eyes, but he pushed on until he saw her, curled near the broken wall, still as stone. He fell to his knees beside her, lifting her limp body into his arms. "Ava, don't leave me," he said, voice cracking. Her skin was cold as marble, but her lips moved faintly. "You shouldn't have come," she breathed. "I'll always come," he said, wrapping her in the blanket. "You hear me? Always." The wind howled around them as he carried her back toward the faint glow of the valley below. The snowstorm began to ease as dawn crept over the valley. Lorenzo trudged onward, Ava's limp form wrapped tight in the blanket against his chest. His breath came in ragged clouds, his boots sinking deep with every step. The farmhouse light glimmered faintly through the storm, a small star of hope in a world gone white. Mary saw them first through the window. She threw open the door as Lorenzo stumbled inside, half frozen. "By God's grace," she cried, helping him lay Eva on the bed near the fire. Her face was pale, lips blue, hands stiff as boards. Ruthie stood behind her grandmother, eyes wide with fear. "Is she gonna die, Papa?" Lorenzo's voice broke. "Not while I still have breath." He rubbed Ava's hands, trying to warm them. Mary brewed broth and soaked cloths in hot water. They worked in silence, hour after hour, the fire snapping loud in the quiet. By nightfall, Eva stirred. Her lashes fluttered, and she whispered his name. Lorenzo leaned close, tears streaking the soot on his cheeks. "You're safe now," he said. "You're home." "I'm sorry," she murmured weakly. "I brought nothing but trouble." He shook his head. "You brought light. You just forgot to see it." Her tears fell, mingling with his. "Why would you still care?" "Because love don't quit when storms come," he said softly. "That's when it matters most." Mary set down the cup of broth, her eyes wet. "Rest now, child," she said. "The Lord's done his work tonight." As the fire burned low, peace settled over the room. Ruthie climbed onto the bed beside Ava, whispering, "Don't leave us again." Ava touched the girl's hair. "Never," she said. Outside, the wind died. The first bird of morning sang faintly from the barnyard ruins. Lorenzo knelt, whispering a prayer of thanks, not for the storm, but for the mercy that followed it. The snow melted in slow rivulets down the lane as spring tried to return. Eva grew stronger each day, though the fire's memory still haunted her dreams. Lorenzo rebuilt what he could of the barn, plank by plank, refusing to speak much about that night. Then, one afternoon, a knock came at the door. Deputy Will Tanner stood there, hat in hand, his breath fogging in the cool air. "Got something you ought to hear," he said. Lorenzo motioned him inside. Mary poured coffee while the deputy's eyes shifted toward Ava. "Truth's come to light about that fire," he said. "A man in town saw your pa, Miss Eva, saw him creeping near the barn with a lantern that night." Ava froze, the color leaving her face. "My father?" Tanner nodded grimly. "He's locked up now. Said he meant to scare the man who stole his daughter. But the whiskey talked louder than sense." Lorenzo's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Thank you, Deputy. You did right." When the door closed behind him, Eva's knees gave way. "He burned your barn. He tried to ruin everything you built." Lorenzo helped her to a chair. "He ruined nothing that can't be made new," he said quietly. "We'll rebuild again." Her tears came fast. "He's still my father." "I know," Lorenzo said, kneeling beside her. "And the Lord will judge him in his own time. But you must let the anger go before it burns you next." She looked at him through blurred eyes. "I don't know how." He took her trembling hands in his. "Start by praying for him. That's how mercy begins." Eva closed her eyes. "Then I'll try," she whispered. Mary, standing near the stove, said softly, "Ain't a soul too far for the Lord's reach." Outside, the thawing earth smelled of new life. Ava felt something uncoil in her heart. Grief, pity, and peace all at once. When she finally looked at Lorenzo, there was no fear left in her eyes, only a steady calm. Spring sunshine washed over the valley, warm and golden after months of gray. Neighbors came from miles around, Amish and townsfolk alike, to help raise the new barn. Hammers rang, saws sang, and laughter filled the air. Ava worked beside Lorenzo, her sleeves rolled up, her face glowing with life again. Ruthie carried nails in her small apron, proud to be part of the work. By noon, the frame stood tall against the sky. Mary laid out food on long tables, blessing it with a trembling smile. The community ate together, all divisions forgotten in the rhythm of shared labor. Even Deputy Tanner stopped by, tipping his hat to Eva before lifting a beam into place. As the sun dipped low, the last board went up. Lorenzo carved a small cross into the doorway beam, his knife steady. Turning to Eva, he said softly, "When this roof's done, I aim to marry you." Tears filled her eyes. "I reckon I'd like that." The crowd cheered, Ruthie clapped, and Mary whispered, "Praise be." Under the new roof, firelight flickered, and for the first time, laughter outshone loss. Summer ripened across the valley, painting the hills in gold and green. Wildflowers swayed in the wind where snow had once buried the earth. The new barn stood proudly, smelling of fresh timber and hope. On a quiet Sunday morning, the Stoltzfus farm became a church. Neighbors gathered in their best clothes, sunlight spilling through the open doors as birds sang above. Lorenzo stood beside Eva beneath the barn's wide doorway, dressed in a clean, white shirt and black vest. Eva wore a simple blue dress Mary had sewn, her cheeks glowing with peace. Ruthie scattered wild rose petals down the aisle, giggling all the while. Mary read from Scripture, her voice trembling with joy. "Love beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things." When the vows were spoken, the crowd cheered. Even Pastor Clancy came forward, humbler now, to bless their union. Lorenzo carved a wooden sign and nailed it above the barn gate. Bought once, freed forever. Weeks later, travelers on the road slowed to read it. Ruthie, playing nearby, smiled and said, That's the day my mama was bought, not by a man, but by mercy. That evening, as fireflies rose over the fields, the family sat on the porch. Eva leaned against Lorenzo's shoulder, his arm around her as twilight deepened. "We've come a long way," she whispered. He nodded, eyes warm. "And the good Lord carried us every mile." Peace settled over the land, quiet and complete. The wind stirred the wheat like a hymn, and the stars looked down upon a home redeemed by love, faith, and grace unending. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.